So I met the next speaker, Dr. Tapabrata Pal, at the IBM Innovate conference in 2014, and holy cow, did he make an impression on me. He was the first distinguished engineer at Capital One, so that's the most senior individual contributor position at that time. And everyone pointed to him as the person who was leading the technology modernization movement there. Topo was also one of our first speakers at DevOps Enterprise Summit in 2014. And it was one of the most shocking presentations that year because it was an actual bank, talking about doing DevOps-like things, which at the time, as Maya mentioned yesterday, seemed absolutely unthinkable. And over the years, Capital One later declared itself as a technology company with a strategy of being cloud first and open source first. So in March 2021, Topo joined Fidelity Investments as their VP of Architecture. So Fidelity was founded in 1946 and recently celebrated its 75th birthday. It is one of the largest asset management firms with over $9.9 trillion under management. According to Wikipedia, Fidelity also manages the largest non-indexed fund in the US with over $100 billion in assets. So in 2021, they had $24 billion in revenue and had over 70,000 employees. So here's Topo to talk about his new adventure at Fidelity.
Thank you, Gene. So we are down to last two, and I'm one of them. So I'm one of the two people who are standing between you and a beautiful Amsterdam evening or afternoon. So for the next 20 minutes, I'll be talking about DevOps at Fidelity. Now, this is a disclaimer. I'm going to pause for a moment, and I'll let you read that. All right. So besides what Gene told me about you, I still have something to say about myself. I'm Topo Pal at Fidelity Investments as one of the vice presidents in Enterprise Architecture Group. My focus is DevOps domain architecture, which is essentially look at DevOps adoption and practices across the enterprise. I also run open source program office. Essentially, I'm a developer, engineer, DevOps enthusiast, and I also wrote a book. And you might have gotten a signed copy of that yesterday, so if you stopped by, so thank you very much. Now, before this, I was at Capital One for 10 years. So I joined Fidelity 2 years ago, a little over 2 years. Before that, I was at Capital One for 10 years. And I was deeply engaged in Capital One's DevOps transformation, hands-on keyboard, writing PowerPoint deck. No, just source code, a lot of coding. But one fine morning, I got a note from LinkedIn, hey, congratulations on your 10 years anniversary. I'm like, that's way too long for one particular company. So then I decided to look. And when I started to looking out for new opportunities, not because I had to, I just wanted to, because LinkedIn said so, I was looking for two things. One is it has to be culturally solid, open culture, and it has to be technically inclined. So during my second interview with Fidelity, I asked HR, what is Fidelity culture? And she sent me this deck, not this particular slide, but a deck that contained this. Culture portrays who we are and what we aspire to be. We know that happy people are more productive, creative, and produce better customer outcomes. We are here to make difference by delivering quality to our customers daily. We believe in leadership at all levels, and that titles don't determine what you can and cannot do. And I'll tell you, even today, when I'm in a meeting with a bunch of other people, and some of them I don't know, I cannot tell their level looking at their name or the HR system. So it is an open conversation. As long as you can debate, discuss, argue about things in a positive manner, everything goes, which is fantastic. And the last thing, no roles, only role models, floored me. I decided to join Fidelity. With that, let me talk about Fidelity Investments a little bit. World's largest and most diversified financial service provider. 1946, and in 2022, we completed 75 years. During that time, we grew a lot. Today, we support 25,000 business customers that trust us with their money and their investments, about 40 million individual investors, $9.9 trillion under administration, $3.7 trillion discretionary assets, and 2.8 million average daily trades. So that's huge scale. Now, Fidelity has always been technology leader in its business domain. Starting from 1979, Fidelity Information Phone, Fidelity Automated Service Telephone, Online Express, Fidelity homepage on the internet, 1996, when people were actually posting cat pictures on internet. We had a homepage that actually allowed people to look up their 401k transactions and assets. And then Fidelity invests a lot of time and energy in developing new cool things around AI, ML, digital assets. So these are some of the things that it has been developing so far. Now, we have about 18,000 tech associates, and these numbers are based on 2022 numbers. We are across 9 countries, and total tech budget is $2.5 billion. Now, let me tell you where I belong in Fidelity. So Fidelity has about 15 business units, and then there are shared services or enterprise units, about 5. One of them is enterprise architecture, and that's where I belong. Okay? With that structure, it's a complex structure. What technology do you use? Everything. I used to actually say, ask people, do you use this? And some technology that was in front of me, and I just by looking at the name, I couldn't tell what it is, so I asked, who uses that? I stopped asking that. I say, okay, show me the usage of it, and they'll actually show it. So Fidelity is not new to DevOps and cloud. 2016, Fidelity had first cloud deployment. 2017, enterprise agile kickoff happened. 2022, 50% applications are on cloud. And our goal is to have 70% of our applications on cloud by 2024. Now, Fidelity's cloud infrastructure and the strategy is complex enough. We are multi-cloud because of various business needs, as well as we have private cloud and data centers. And that's not going to change in the very near future. The progress is in 2022, up to 2022, I said 50% of our applications are on cloud. And we have about 1,600 agile squads. I already talked about 18,000 developers. Now, here's the improvement that has happened over the years through the DevOps and cloud journey. Business impacted incidents gone down significantly. Change-induced incidents gone down significantly. MTTR has gone down significantly. At the same time, number of changes went up significantly. So the question is, how do you go to the next level? What are our challenges, and what are we doing about that? So during my first month at Fidelity, I actually interviewed all kind of people across the enterprise, CIOs, architects, developers, risk officers, auditors, security folks. And then I asked them 3 questions. What is going good? What is not going good? What would you like to see changed? And based on that interview over the period of 1 month, I created sticky notes. I actually have stuck it on my wall in my home office and went through that, and I grouped them together. And I actually created a set of challenges and grouped them together in these 4 groups. Number 1 is developer experience. Onboarding takes a long time. Documentation is a problem. Not that there's not enough documentation. Actually, there are too many of them. Context switching is a big problem for developers. Between one context to another, there is a cloud onboarding, there's a DevOps tools onboarding, there is other onboarding processes. And then tool sprawls. I think this is everybody's problem here. Raise your hand if it is not. There are too many tools and technologies and platforms, and there are variations, and then modernization is a problem. Security audit compliance shifted right. late feedback that causes a lot of friction between developers and the rest of the enterprise. And ownership is a problem. Ownership of security vulnerabilities. Who owns them? Who is responsible? Metrics. There are a lot of metrics around and a lot of techniques to create those metrics and many, many maturity models. So with these, I presented to the CIO's councils and basically said, we need to do something about it. So the idea was to get everybody together. And that's what we did over the next 6 months. That was 2021. And we created something called DevOps Council. The structure of DevOps Council looks like this. There are business unit representations from every business unit. The DevOps tools, platform engineers are there. The architecture, software engineers, SREs, risk audit compliance officers, and cybersecurity team. And there are CIO sponsors, and I am one of the co-chairs of the DevOps Council. Now, the DevOps Council, depending upon what problem it tries to solve, it creates these working groups underneath that. Small working groups, small problem, get onto the problem, find a solution, come back with a solution, and then as the DevOps Council, we approve the solution, or we debate more about it. With these, I go back to the challenges, and we discuss these challenges in the DevOps Council to figure out how do you solve this problem. So these are the 4 big patterns that we created. Number 1, we need unified developer experience. We need tools standardization. We need continuous compliance. And we need contextual metrics. And I'm going to talk about these things in my next slides, except unified developer experience, because that itself has become a big program across the enterprise because it's not easy to solve have a unified developer experience all across. So the things that I'm going to talk about are tool standardization, continuous compliance, and contextual metrics. So the first is tool sprawl, as I said, is a big problem for all of us. In my past life, I may have counted so many tools across the enterprise and had gone into such a frictionful tools discussion that I would like to stay away from it for the rest of my life. There are solutions that kind of existed before we started. There are solutions that have been gone into production during my time, and there are solutions that are coming on. So there is friction all across. So what we decided is that we are going to create standardized tools, standardized pipelines, and automated onboarding and setup. Now, the standardized pipelines is because of this. In my past life, I counted one company, I'm not going to name them, had 57 pipelines. And they all did the same thing. Why do I need 57? Just because. Now, if you have a Java application, and if you are doing Maven or Gradle build and you're deploying to a Kubernetes cluster, I think there should be only one pipeline. Now, based on technology stacks, we are trying to create standardized pipelines for all this technology stack. And the question is, are the developers going to use it? We have to see. But when the developers push back, we ask one question. What different thing do you want other than this? If you have something good, try to contribute in the same pipeline so that everybody else can use that. Automated onboarding and setup goes back to the developer experience point of view to create a better developer experience all around. Security audit compliance must be embedded, and we want to aim for continuous compliance. We want to shift left security. Security scanning, whether it's SaaS or SCA or open source scanning, if you call it, are embedded into the pipeline and in the source code. So as soon as a PR or pull request is open against a Git repository, then the scans run immediately and actually feeds back to the developer so that they can make a decision as to whether to merge that pull request or not. Pre-configured mandated gates in the standard pipeline, and that is one purpose of standardizing the pipeline. We want to actually mandate certain gates within the pipeline to make or break the pipeline, depending upon some criteria. And we are going to talk about that criteria in a later stage. Pipeline execution data collection. We actually are streaming out all this pipeline execution data in an evidence store so that we can track which pipeline is running which stage and what are the results for that particular stage. Now, aiming for continuous compliance, these are the rules we are going to implement, and we are actually in the process of implementing that. Rule number 1, no persistent production access to anyone, period, not even ops. Changes in production only via a pipeline, which basically means everything is source code. What that is going to do is that it will going to force us to do every change peer-reviewed before it gets to production. And real-time audit of every change via pipeline evidence store that I talked about. Before this, audit and compliance had to have a tough audit and compliance team, and the developers had a frictionful life. Problem is, imagine yourself, you have a release button. When it clicks, it actually releases software to production. Question is, from audit compliance side, who clicks that button, right? Everybody is happy. The developers are not happy. The release and compliance team are happy as long as a developer who actually coded that feature, designed that feature, architected that feature, knows all about that feature, as long as those people don't click that button, they're all happy, except the person who clicks that button, because that person have no clue as to what that button does. So in that scenario, the only way to solve the problem is actually not have anybody to click that button. The button gets activated by the evidence that is collected from the pipeline execution. Once that button is activated, it doesn't matter who clicked it, right? So that's the model that we're going after. The next is contextual metrics, measure what matters. The evidence data also is going to give us the metrics or the data behind the metrics that we want to care about. Measurement. We want to actually go back to the basic of measurements instead of embracing Dora metrics or any other metrics, because you can talk to me after the offline and I can tell you my experience around all these different framework or metrics. We want to actually go back to basic and ask ourselves, why do we want to measure something? Who do we want to measure? An application team, an individual, an organization, a business unit, a particular product area, what? When do we want to measure it? Do we want to measure a matured application, or do you want to measure an application that is being constantly developed and changed? And what are you going to measure? Are you going to measure code commit frequency, or are you going to measure delivery frequency or deployment frequency, or what? And how are you going to measure? This is important because if we want to do deployment frequency measurement, somebody needs to define what deployment means. Deployment of an application. Next question is, what is an application? So all these questions come up. So unless there is a solid definition of how the measurement is going to take place, the unit of measurement, there's no way to compare two teams or two products or two applications or two business units, whatever. And then we need to avoid the observer effect. By the way of observing something, we sometimes impact the system so that the observation by itself is wrong. For example, if you want to measure commit frequency as a developer, I'm going to work around the system and I'm going to fool the system to get my numbers up. That's not a good thing. Measure to improve something. So what we decided is we want to write down what we want to measure, just like an agile story, as a something or someone. I want to measure something so that something. And this is an example. As a product owner, I want to measure team's production access frequency so that I can understand the team's technical maturity and help improve it. So with that, we are not going to do it all by a central team or something. We are investing in inner source. So we have developed an inner source model within Fidelity, and it looks like just like any other good open source project. Incubate, fund, govern, manage, promote, and then operate. And with this, we have, in 2 years, we have 5 total inner source projects. And in one such inner source project, which is our pipeline libraries and pipeline catalog that we are creating, we have until now, or until 2022, we had 174 features delivered, 3,500 commits, done by 12 business units, and about 50 active contributors. So the help I needed is, if you are using any DevOps metrics, I want to learn what are you using and how are they doing or how are they helping you. And then number 2 is, if you are invested in inner sourcing, I want to learn more about your model because we do have some struggle in scaling that model up. Any processes that you have or any challenges that you have faced. With that, thank you very much. Have the good rest of the evening.
Thank you, Topo.